evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this late night Arsenal special. You're joined by me, Dan. We'll be hosting this evening from Talk Football. Jesse, important member of the Talk Football community. We're going to be bringing you a full overview of Arsenal's season, looking at how they've done, whether it was a success or it was a missed opportunity, or even a failure potentially, just based on what they could have achieved this season. We're going to be discussing the manager, Arteta. Is he the right man to take them forward? Is he going to be the person who will take them back to where Arsenal should be, competing for titles, competing for trophies on a regular basis? We're going to be looking at the transfers. Have they been a success? Those that have come in, those who have left the club as well, most recently in January. And then looking at also going forward with the club, the players that they're being linked with, the players that they need to improve their team, and in general, how we feel they're going to get on next season. So with that, we might as well get straight into it. So, Jesse, Arsenal, they finished 5th this season, Europa League. 2 seasons on the bounce, they finished 8th. More points than they had last season, 69 points. However, conceded more goals and a big missed opportunity for top 4. Jesse, what are your thoughts on their Arsenal this season?
Just to start off, I think it's important to recognize the improvements that they have had. Their youth is something that I don't think people should overlook. And I think a lot of people have kind of tried to downplay not necessarily what Mikel Arteta has done, but I will give him credit for developing the youth. He does seem to have an issue with managing senior squad members, which doesn't bode well for the future. But as far as their youth players, I mean, Saka, Odegaard, Emile Smith-Rowe, and Martinelli, they have others like Lakanga. I think Tavares is still relatively young. White's young, but you would expect him to be able to step up to the plate, almost kind of like Saka. Saka kind of reminds me of Rashford in a way, where he's getting to the point where he's young, but we can't consider him a young player. Odegaard's kind of in that bracket where he's young, but he's Norway's captain. So you can't really give him too much leeway. No, I think that we need to at least take a look at what they've done very well. And what they've done very well is promote the youth and allow them to flourish. And their statistics have looked pretty good. So what I would like to see is, for as far as success goes, if I were to consider this season, if I were to say there's one thing that they need to improve on, was keeping senior players fit. Again, Tierney's young, but he's a captain. He was the captain of Celtic for years before. Partey, Xhaka. Really what they need to focus on next year is keeping the senior players fit, so that they can lead these young players in, as well as adding to those senior players to lead these young players. Because the biggest problem at Arsenal this season has been not allowing for these young players to be young. They're not allowing kids to be kids.
Yeah. So, yeah. No, 100%. I agree with you on that one. It's brilliant to have a young team full of excitement, full of raw talent, full of drive, full of commitment, full of all the things that that you would want from the players, which are the positives. But it's worth looking at the negatives. With being young players, is they are not players who consistently are able to perform week in, week out. The experience that allows them to learn certain tricks and skills within games, game management, season management, being able to make the right decisions at the right times, are lacking. And it did show throughout the season with their most important senior players. I'm looking at Granit Xhaka, Thomas Partey, Kieran Tierney, Gabriel, are all players who were the most senior players within that team. And they lacked discipline and consistency throughout, basically from minute go. They had numerous red cards, numerous yellow cards, which attributed to the situation that we were in. So I suppose with that, we can look at the details as to where Arsenal were. They have gone from 8th to 5th, which is progress. It is improvement. However, as seasons play on, you have to look at the situation and say, what is our current goals? So our goal probably would have been at day one of the season was to get back into the Europa League and try and challenge for top four. The difference is that they were in the driving seat for top four with around 7 or 8 games to go. It got to a point where they only needed 3 points from 4 matches, and they capitulated. This, for me, was a build-up of numerous factors, not just any one factor. You can't just blame this on Mikel Arteta, or blame it on the recruitment, or blame it on the players, or blame it on particular individuals. It was all of these things all together created the scenario that turned out. Arteta and the players were naive. They lacked the know-how to get the job done where they needed it to be done. So it was interesting when it came to the end of the season and they got fifth, which was brilliant. They got 69 points, 8 more points than the season before. They won 22 matches, more than the season they won before. However, the issue is that they actually lost just as many as they did the season last time. And that was the problem. Therein lies the issue. So going forward with they've conceded 48 goals as well, which for a team who signed a lot of defenders, it questions as to how that occurred.
When a lot of the rhetoric around Arteta was that their defense was a little bit more stable last year, they brought in a couple of defenders. I think Gabriel is a good defender. I do think he's a good defender. I'm not sure if he's the level that Arsenal will want to keep around later on, but they spent 50 million on White, and I'm not necessarily sure. I don't think the defense has improved, but I also think that that's not helped along by the fact that we've already kind of had this conversation, and you've got Tierney falling out of form. Tomiyasu has a calf strain for God knows how long. It was 3 months. I mean, I've ruptured my Achilles tendon, and I was back in 6 weeks. I don't think I have better genetics than Tomiyasu. I don't. So I don't know what happened there. But I also, just going back to the initial point, I think it comes back on experienced players, letting the young players down. Xhaka having to slot back into left back. And this also becomes an Arteta issue near the end of the season where they're under pressure. And instead of sticking a kind of wounded ego of Nuno Tavares, however you want to say it, into that situation, Xhaka is not a left back, so I'll cut him some slack. But the fact is, there was no one to depend on there. There was no senior players. And the fact is, Arteta sold them all during January, basically, or last summer. So it just screams to me of ill planning. A team, a squad, a club that didn't plan things out, but likes to say, look, we have this philosophy and this theory on how we're going to get back to the top, when in actuality, they don't. They really don't. And I think that what Arteta has done in a lot of respects is good. But I also think that what we're going to look at in the next 12 to 18 months, can he manage personalities? Because as far as now, all roads lead to no. He can't manage senior players, and that's not good enough. So,
and there's evidence to show that, isn't there? Really, when you look at the way that, as you mentioned, with him transferring or loaning out a number of senior players in January and not bringing anybody in, they were heavily linked with players like Alexander Isak. They were heavily linked with players like Dusan Vlahovic. These players, for me at the time, were unattainable. They were players who ultimately were tier one, Champions League title competing players who would only be going to the teams at the very highest part of the tree. And they were very active in trying to sign these players. And it wasn't necessary. It would have made sense for them to bring in someone who was a little bit more of a temporary situation for them to have taken them over the line. I remember quoting myself as to say, I don't know whether or not they'll get top four because I think the goals will dry up. Alexander Lacazette was impotent when it came to scoring goals. He was incapable of scoring goals. He scored one, which was given as an own goal against Wolves. And then that was probably about it. He was a good hold-up player, but there was no one to hold up the ball for because the goals started to dry up. Players like Bukayo Saka, who this season has been fantastic, probably their best player. He's a brilliant talent, but he's young. He's very raw. He's not the kind of player that you can constantly rely on. He scored 11 goals and had 7 assists this season. Fantastic output for his, for him, for the play, for what he's done, and he's carried a team who should be top 4 every single season and should be looking to compete for titles. And he's been fantastic, but players like Aubameyang weren't replaced, and when you don't replace the goals, eventually it's going to catch up with you. And funnily enough, that wasn't the issue that caught Arsenal out in the end. It was conceding goals. They weren't able to keep clean sheets. They were incapable of keeping teams out. We looked at the Newcastle game before the last game of the season. They looked very, very soft. They look a team who wasn't capable of defending. They couldn't deal with the physicality. And this was. We look at the transfers that they brought in, because this is where we talked about it. They brought in Ben White, 52.65 million. They brought in Tomiyasu, 16.7 million. Nuno Tavares, £7 million. These players are all defenders. And they brought in a brand new goalkeeper in Ramsdale who cost them £25 million. They spent in excess of £100 million on trying to concede less goals. So it just begs the question. How have you got worse when you have invested in your defence? It's a very strange situation. So just before we move on, I just want to say thank you very much for our viewers who are currently on. If you can put a like on, stick a comment, let us know what you think. If you've got any points or opinions, please put them in the comments. And we're really, really made up that you're here and watching the show. Honestly, it's fantastic. So with that, looking there is Arteta and the board, Edu, made the decision to loan the players and remove the players from the team. That's their decision. It's completely within their control to do this. But they were unable to bring the kind of players in or identify the players that would have taken them to the next step from January, because they saved an awful lot of money in January from wages, from Aubameyang. He was on £300,000 a week, and they did nothing with it. And they've paid the price, because top 4 is 20 odd million pounds just for getting in the competition. It had paid for itself.
Yeah, I think the idea there, and unfortunately, this is what Arsenal fans are living with right now, and kind of not looking at themselves, because Arsenal fans have been supporting their team all season, and it's commendable to be doing that, especially when you have, just real quick, I just want to read off the 4 top goal scorers for Arsenal's squad this season: Saka, Smith Rowe, Odegaard, Martinelli, and Nketiah.
So got a combined age of about 16.
21, but yeah, exactly. And it's one of those where the idea of loosening up your wage bill is to then reciprocate and put that into a pot where then you bring someone else in who can do the job that wasn't previously being done. Yeah. And so they absolutely failed Arteta, and I can't remember, I think it was Turkish from AFTV made a really good point, and it was Arteta at the beginning of the window said, we need to make moves in this window. And when you say that, you mean offensive moves, not selling off your senior players to free up the wage bill. That's not what making moves means. But then at the end of the window, he comes on and says, it was an excellent window. I don't think I think it's disingenuous. And I think he's just protecting the club in that respect, because they weren't able to get these deals over the line. Vlahovic, Isaac. A lot of the issue that Arsenal does have, from my understanding, is, and United used to have it, which is why I kind of believe that this is the truth, is that we have issues. We traditionally have had issues with when you spend so long to get a transfer over the line. Yeah. I would say somewhere around 60 to 70% of the time, the price set by the club ends up going up by 5 to 10 million. So Isaac, first off, I'm happy for Arsenal. They never should have spent 70 million euros or 70 million pounds or whatever ended up being the final fee, estimated fee for Isaac. He's not worth that much. He's worth maybe 35, maybe, if anything. So that's not bad. The fact is, they might have been able to get him for 50 at the beginning of January. Instead, they waited all that time and still missed out on him. Another issue, very United-like, what they did was they chased Vlahovic, who is unobtainable the entire window. And guess what happens? He ends up going to Juventus. Why? Because he always wanted to go to Juventus. He said it. He said it many times. His agent pretty much made it clear. And at the end of the day, I think Juventus made an ultimatum to, I can't remember who they bought him from for the life of me.
Fiorentina.
And they ended up, the ultimatum was there, but it wasn't there. And Juventus basically said, okay, we'll take him. We'll take him in January. A lot like Liverpool did with Diaz.
Yeah.
Because Tottenham was sniffing around their target, and Liverpool ended up going, okay, well, I've had enough of this. So we'll just pay it now because we know we're going to want him in the summer anyways. So there's no harm, no foul. We pay a little bit over, but we get our player.
Yeah, 100%. And it was one of those, when you look at certain players and they get linked with clubs, for me, it didn't seem likely. And you just get a feeling for a player, and you just think, you look at the situation that Arsenal were in, you look at the situation where Vlahovic was, young, raw, probably one of the kind of most exciting young strikers in football. And with the greatest respect to Arsenal and the current situation they're in, it's a very, very difficult sell to say, would you like to come to our project? We're building something here. And when you're a player who knows where you are in the world, when you know that you are wanted, and you've got teams who are winning titles in Juventus, going to Champions Leagues, getting out of the group stages, going to later stages with Juventus as they are, you're always going to be at a very, very big disadvantage. And the only way that you can genuinely, as a club who is further down the pecking order, is to either offer a package which is so insurmountably good that you wouldn't be able to turn it down. And then that comes in its own problems, doesn't it? That if you're getting players because you're paying them the most, or you're giving them the most lucrative deals, are they actually there for the right reasons? And that's a question. So I felt they wasted a lot of time going for a number of targets who were unattainable, and they would have been much better served looking at players who would have done the job for them, but they didn't need to be as exciting, if that makes sense. They just needed someone who would come in on a 2 or 3 year contract to provide an extra 7 or 8, 10 goals in a season. Someone like, I'll pick a name, Divock Origi. Liverpool wouldn't have sold Divock Origi to Arsenal, but he is that kind of player. And I'm sure if I got my, my big, dictionary of players, there is numerous of those at clubs who you could go, he would come to that club, he would score goals, he would, do the job that was required. So they wasted an awful lot of time. And that's funny because they've wasted not a lot of time, but a lot of their transfers that they've made haven't quite worked out. I mean, we look at last season's ones, not the ones that just happened, but the season before, when they brought in players like Thomas Partey and your man from Scotland, Kieran Tierney. They've both been pretty flat. They've both been pretty flat signings. Neither of them have lived up to the billing. Tierney's issues has come from injuries. He has always been an injury-prone player, hasn't he? That was well known prior to his signings. And then going to Partey, we only see glimpses of the player we saw off Atletico Madrid. He's not settled very well in England at all.
I slightly disagree. I think that Partey has started to settle. I do think it's kind of that 1 year rule. I do think that he started to settle, but he has the same affliction as Tierney does. The fact is he's injury prone, and he keeps coming out. It doesn't help when he comes over the sideline and says, "Look, my hamstring is about to go. I need to get off this pitch." And Arteta pushes him back on because there's a breakaway. I understand there's a breakaway, and I'd probably do the same. But the fact is that that would have been signaled to the sideline many plays before, like 5 minutes. I've got 5 minutes. I don't think that for all the things that Partey has done
Yeah.
improperly during his career at Arsenal, I don't think that you can say he's inexperienced and that he didn't know that was coming. I also just want to point out one more thing about these players like Vlahovic, any Italian player. I know that I don't think Vlahovic is Italian, but any of these
No, he's Serbian.
but these players who grew up in that kind of like Ukrainian, Serbian, Italian culture, Hungarian, it's very much like they have these really deep rooted family values, and so they tend to gravitate towards leagues like Italy where those values are upheld, and they tend to, once they find a place where they kind of consider home, especially the Italian players. If you notice, the big Italian players don't tend to leave Italy. So it's always a massive risk because you could be Liverpool in the current state. I think Liverpool, City, Real Madrid, even Bayern Munich isn't super attractive at this moment in time, just right now, because they're kind of in a rebuild a little bit.
Yeah.
You're going to struggle on any level to get those players out of Italy because they want to stay there. And Vlahovic was very much the same. It was anyone could come in for me at this point in time, but I want Juventus. And if Juventus comes calling, no matter who you are, I'll wait it out to the end of the window and I'll go there. So it was always a massive risk. And then you end up scrambling for Isaac at the end, and it just doesn't end up making sense. But then this is where I think that we should get into it, Dan. Really, the transfer failings, because there's a couple of them. I don't know. If you finish up on a point there.
I mean, there is. I mean, I think we should probably start with probably the easiest of those targets, and that is, Nuno Tavares. He only came in for a small fee, 7 million. So it's not the greatest of risks. However, it's another failed wingback, coming into the team, another player who's clearly not trusted by Arteta. He's been a liability. He's let them down. Another player, basically, which is not going to have a lot of reciprocal value for them to sell on. I'm trying to think. I'm looking at Tomiyasu, and I think he's just been a little bit unlucky. I think he's got quality. However, again, it hasn't worked out for one reason or another. Whether it's the doing the background checks to see how these players are going to develop, whether or not these injuries are something we've looked at before, whether they're issues that they've had, or whether or not these are just unlucky in the situation. Lokonga, 16 million. He's hardly really featured. He's had 20-odd games this season. However, I mean, I rarely remember a game where he was genuinely influential in that team. So, I mean, and then we can probably go on to, Ben White and Gabriel together have worked really, really well. They've been a successful pairing. But when you come with a price tag of £52 million, you're expecting a very, very high level. And I don't think he's quite lived up to that level.
No, I don't think that Ben White has lived up to that level at all. I think that there's overinflation in the market, especially for English players. And I think that it would be in the best interest of a lot of English clubs to steer clear of English center backs at this point in time. I also think that when we start talking about Tomiyasu and Tavares, the fact is Tavares just isn't good enough. So the scouting there was just flat out wrong. There's a lot of players like that. I could even include Telles from United. So I'm not taking the piss at all out of Arsenal. I think that there's a lot of players that they look good on the ball, but they just end up not being up to the standard.
Yeah.
Tavares was by far the biggest howler that Arsenal had last window. Next one, unfortunately, is Lokonga. Lokonga was one of those that I looked at and I thought, hey, look, he looks like a very good player from Belgium. I think he was either captain or one of the leaders of his previous club.
Yeah.
He looked like a good player. Problem is they brought him in essentially, and any Arsenal fans who either are here or can watch us back can tell me I'm wrong. He looked like he was meant to be a understudy for Thomas Partey. And the fact is he's just not there. And that's an even bigger risk in recruitment, is bringing in someone to be an understudy for a top player stroke world-class player on his day when you into the Premier League, which is more physical,
Yeah.
than any other league in the world, more fast paced. It's such a risk that I think they messed up, and that's I'm kind of the Arteta has me right here when I say El Neni is actually his backup at this point in time. So it's kind of the proof is in pudding there. Ramsdale, I think he's done well, but you know how I feel about him. I feel like we need to give him another season
You
because
know how I feel about him. I've said the same. I I can't give props to a player. He's young. He is. He has had some very good performances. He's done well. Um, but we can't just judge on moments. You can't just judge on one game and one save and sort of latch onto that and then make your opinion up from there. It needs to be a complete view of the team. And Ramsdale, on a number of occasions, for me, has shown either his age and his inexperience, or has shown some traits which I feel that he may not be able to remove. And if he doesn't, then he's going to suffer as he goes on. A number of the times, like the situations, for example, I believe it was against United, he made a save, and his next thought to do was to then punch the air and cheer, and the ball was still in play. It felt to me that that's not an attitude of professionalism. That was getting caught up in the moment. And for a goalkeeper, for me, the most important player on a pitch to be calm is the goalkeeper. You want them to be the strong, silent type for me, looking at them there. I'm hoping that's just an age thing. I'm hoping that he'll calm down, he'll settle in and realise, that he's the number one for Arsenal. He's potentially going to be competing for the number one jersey for England, which he should be. And that's down to him. He's come in at a price which is expensive. 25 million is not a prospect. He's purchased at 25 million to be the number one. And next season's going to be very important for me. I'm not making any judgments. I think he started well. But again, he's conceded more goals this season than the season prior. And he has a part to play in that at the end of the day. I won't go back and point out particular goals that where he may well be at fault for, or he could have done something about. Diogo Jota in the in the away leg at the home leg for them at the Emirates, he should have done better at the near post. He was beaten from a shot which he probably should have saved. Musa Sissoko from Watford, he puts the ball underneath when they played and they won 3-2 in the end, but it should have been a much more comfortable victory. He jumped so high that Musa Sissoko is a big man, and he could have gone straight underneath him with him. Watch it back if you can find it, ladies and gentlemen. But genuinely, I've never seen a goalkeeper jump so high to stop the ball that was on the floor. But that was that. So he's got potential. Martin Odegaard's come in. I think he's been good. I think 31 million is sort of par for the course for a player who, is as well known as he is. He's got the pedigree. He was picked up by Real Madrid at 16 years of age, made a very, very big deal of. And he's come in. He's scored 7 goals, 4 assists, which is decent. I think he has suffered, though, for the fact that Arsenal don't have any goal scorers. And he hasn't lacked creating chances. However, I don't think there's the quality on the other end to score those goals.
Unfortunately, I have a different angle on that. So sorry, I want to pull it up before I do this. So I'll just start off by saying he has been good at creating chances. Unfortunately, if you look at his created chances, I think he's up near the top. I'm not going to be able to find it but I have this off the top of my head. He's up there with Bruno Fernandes, with Kevin De Bruyne, with
Trent.
all these players with Phil Foden, Harry Kane. I think Mo Salah is up there. for creating chances. But the fact is, when you actually break it down, every single one of those players that he's up there with have 3 times as many big chances created. So he's creating pot shots. He's playing the ball to ESR or Xhaka to hit a 20-yard worldie.
It's the quality of the chances. Yeah, it's not the quantity, it's the quality. Yeah. No, I think I saw the same one as you. I remember looking at it and thinking his chances created was incredibly high. But then when you then looked at it for big chances created, that was relatively low percentage-wise in comparison, wasn't it?
The quality of the chances is incredibly low. A chance created, just for anyone who ends up watching, is passing the ball to someone who takes a shot. Not getting an assist, not whether they score or whatever, but just if you pass the ball to someone and they take a shot, and it might have to hit the target, but at the same time, I don't think it has to hit the target.
I don't think
that would make sense. Big shots created are like in almost unmissable chances. So I think KDB has 16, Bruno has 15. I'm not even on a Bruno hype train. I really don't rate him right now, but even he's creating those. Harry Kane's up there with like 17 or something, and I think Mo Salah's up there with like 18, 19 or whatever it may be.
It's linked to assists, isn't it? At the end of the day, every assist is going to be a big chance created, isn't it? Plus the ones that don't go in. So it stacks up very quickly, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, it does because more than likely they're going to score. I don't know what the actual metric for it is, but it's got to be something drawn to XG.
It's likely to be within the box. It's likely to be, based on situations with one-on-ones and stuff like that. So, yeah, I mean, that's it. So, I mean, looking at this, they're the players that have come in. And it's, for me, I don't think any of those players have really shone. The players who have shone at the team were, for me, the ones that were already there, the ones that were part of their youth system. So we're going to look at Saka, look at ESR, and Emile Smith-Rowe and Gabriel Martinelli. I mean, between the 3 of them, 27 goals, 17 assists. They're carrying the team, and they have an average age of 21 years of age. That's crazy.
So I found this funny because we were talking about all the experienced players in the squad. We're talking about our Xhakas, our Tierney's, because he is a senior player. Partey. We didn't even mention Lacazette in our opener and in our opening. And the fact is, he should be there, but he's not. We can't even consider him of any use because he's not scoring the goals. He should be V1 leading this team forward. And in the past, Aubameyang has been that. Now, I think I just want to go ahead and give Arsenal some credit because this can't just be like us basically laying into Arsenal. The fact is, it has done some things really well. Getting rid of senior players that don't want to be there. Now, I do think a lot of that has to do with Arteta's mismanagement of those senior players, but also getting rid of some of those players is a good thing.
Yeah.
The Aubameyang argument is difficult because I agree with a lot of people who say he should have kept him because we don't have a natural striker now and he shouldn't be playing left wing no matter what. But at the same time, I do think it was time for him to go.
Yeah.
The only way like I said, I don't want to bash Arteta on that because I do think there was evidence there that these guys did need to go. But you have to be able to manage senior players. So we're looking at Arsenal now, and the Arsenal fan base is saying, get in this player, get in that player. Serge Gnabry, get him in. There's no evidence that Arteta can manage a personality like Gnabry over the next, what is it? I have it down here. Five-year contract is what he wants on $300K a week. I mean, what is this? And Gnabry won't be another Ozil, I don't think. But the fact is, that's exactly where we're headed. We don't know anything about Arteta. He's never managed a proper senior player who's, circa 27 to 21 years old on big money. He's never managed a single one successfully. So I think he's doing some really special things with young players, but he's completely destroying the actual seniority in the squad.
100%. I mean, it's a good thing that you brought up Aubameyang because we can kind of look at the players that that Arsenal sold. And as I say, this is no bashing, because ultimately this is two players. I'm a Liverpool fan. Jesse's a United fan. I've got no dog in the fight here. For me, I'm just looking from the outside, looking at a club that when I've grown up, I'm 31 years of age. I grew up watching Arsenal competing with Manchester United to win titles. And I'm sure any Arsenal fan out there watching, that's where you want to be. And that should be the goal. It's a goal for Liverpool. It was a goal for Liverpool when we were finishing 6th, 7th, and 8th. It was, the goal doesn't change because of the standards that you set at your club at the end of the day. So we'll have a look at the players that they sold and removed from the club for whether they were the right reasons or they want. So the only player that they actually sold for any actual sum of cash that was worth talking about was Joe Willock. They cashed in on him doing so very well at Newcastle. And it's worked out because he's gone to Newcastle and hasn't really hit the levels that he was the season prior. So 25 million, it goes off the bill. It paid for Ramsdale, basically. He was free. But then we kind of look at the players that they've removed from the team. So we'll look at the ones that were first. So Torreira went off to Italy. He was, for me, I thought he was okay, a senior player, but he's gone. He's gone to Italy. He's very happy where he is. He's staying where he is. Kolasinac is gone. He went on a free. Maitland-Niles went in January on a loan. Hector Bellerin's been on a long-term loan, but he's made his opinion quite clear. He wants to remain at Real Betis. He doesn't want to come back, and he's told the club, sort it out. He's quite, he knows exactly where he wants to be. And for whether that's the right reasons or not, he has kind of given us a little bit of a door that he wants to leave Arsenal so very quickly. And he's not playing at a top club. With the greatest respect to Real Betis, who've just gone and won the Copa del Rey, by the way, and congratulations to them. He's not at a Real Madrid. He's not at a Barcelona. He's at a club which is, probably in the pecking order lower than Arsenal. He's quite happy just to go. He doesn't want to stay. In the January, they got rid of Chambers as a defender, which was, that's come back to bite them. Because when you saw Gabriel and we saw Tomiyasu and we saw these players all going down injured, they gave him away for free in the January to Aston Villa, which was a bit of a shock to everyone, to be honest with you, because he's quite, for me, he was just a Mr. Dependable. He did what he was needed to do. He wasn't exciting, he wasn't brilliant, but he was someone who you go, do you know what? If I need someone who's going to go out there, put a tackle in and stick his head on the ball, that's exactly what he did. And he'd been round Arsenal for about 5 or 6 seasons. So he knew what it was about to be an Arsenal player. So looking at that one, the biggest one, as you mentioned, is Aubameyang. And that, for me, it's a bit of a scale, because I do understand why they needed to sell him, because I'll trust the leaks and the information that was coming out of the club. He was fined. He was removed the captaincy. He was sort of taken out of the first team for repeated disciplinary issues, and these were linked to turning up late. The main one was coming back from international duty, which apparently he was meant to return on the Wednesday. However, he didn't return on the Wednesday, he returned on the Thursday. He was fined. He was then removed of the captaincy. And for that felt like it was the final straw, and it was done. The whole relationship with Aubameyang and Arteta and Arsenal was over, and it was not going to come back. And you can have the argument to sit there and say you've got to remove players from teams who are setting bad examples, especially when so many of those players are very young. And that I agree with. I totally agree with that. But then at the same token, is there not a way back? Is there not a way of kind of you've had your punishment, you've had your conversation, and then you sit there and speak to them about and say, right, this is what we expect, this is what we need to do, and allow the door for them to come back? Because Aubameyang is left on a free. He left on a free. He has value. He's gone to Barcelona, scored a fair few goals, double figures, I believe, in a short period of time. The quality of a player like Aubameyang, to allow him to leave for free, but then to sell the side of it that, he's 300 grand a week off the wage bill, is wonderful. But as you've already mentioned, you're meant to invest that money into another player, and it never happened. So it was good that they got rid of them, but I questioned as to why there wasn't a plan. And the plan that they had was to go after players that were unattainable, in my opinion.
Yeah, so first point, the scariest thing is you brought up Chambers. Chambers is someone who understands the culture of Arsenal and has been there long enough to remember the last successes that Arsenal has had in the Premier League or FA Cup or just within the general economy of English football.
Yeah.
The other one, I can't remember my other point. That's the scariest one for me. Chambers was the one where I look at it and I say, look, he's a consummate professional who understands Arsenal, has been in top four. He has played in the Champions League. And why would you get rid of him now without replacing him? Replacing him is a completely different issue. This was my second point. I just remembered it. And it is, when you do clear up your wage bill, the idea is obviously to do so with the intention of replacing that said player. They don't have to be the best player in the world. It could have been Chris Wood. Honestly, to God, I'm not even taking the piss. It could have been Chris Wood. That would have served them really well. The amount of crosses that they've had going into the box where there's no one on the end of it, that would have done really well. But the fact is, they sold Aubameyang, and you can tell this is the case because it's very clear. They sold Chambers because for whatever reason, maybe he wanted to go, maybe he wanted first team football and didn't think he could get ahead of these players. But then they sold Aubameyang, and they did it without a plan. Again, I'll keep pointing this out because Arsenal fans will not like a United fan criticize them. United has done this constantly. We just let Paul Pogba go on a free for the second time. And ironically, by the way, Juventus brought him back for the second time. I don't know what's going on with literally everything's wrong. But the fact is, when you let players go, you need to have a plan. Arteta's ego precedes him to the detriment of the team. I agree to a large extent, Twisted. I really do. I think that he has something within him that says, if you're not going to listen to me, then you're in the wrong. But sometimes the opposite is true, and you're just not making good decisions, and you're not using players in the right way. Aubameyang was a striker, and we haven't seen him play 9. Not even a 9, like a dynamic 9 is what he is, and we haven't seen him play that for 18 months, 2 years before they sold him. So
if you're not going to play the right players in the right situations, then that's where it's going to come down. So I think that's a good opportunity for us to kind of just move on to the Arteta question, because it is a question. The Arsenal fan base has been, very, some will call it toxic positivity, but they've been very positive about the situation, that they've had enough of the backbiting. I think they've had years and years of infighting, of Wenger in, Wenger out, Unai Emery in, Unai Emery out. And I think for a large quantity and probably for the loudest voices within the Arsenal fan base, have wanted to say, let's stop the civil war that's sort of going on, and let's get behind this manager, let's back him, and we're going to say that he is the manager, he's the right man to do the job. And that's great. But my question will be, how long and what realistic targets are Arsenal fans going to give from Mikel Arteta? And I say this because they missed out on top 4, and top 4 was the be all and end all for many Arsenal fans. It was celebrated. We had videos made and TikToks and YouTube and Instagram. Everything was going very, very big. Champions League. This photo was taken in the future in the round of 16 in the Champions League. They were very, very excited. And it just goes to show, not in a way that how far they've fallen back, but the way that the targets have changed. For in the past, finishing top 4 was the bare minimum and not something to be celebrated. They had enough of finishing top 4 season after season after season after season for under Wenger, and that's why they got rid of him, because they wanted to be challenging and going for titles and winning trophies, and as Arsenal, that's what they should be doing year in, year out. So for me, I'm looking at Arteta And I would give him, as a fan, 18 more months to prove that he's able to take the club forward. Champions League next season is an absolute necessity. Is an absolute necessity because they're going to spend again this summer, and we're going to go on to that. This is where we're going to bring some more positivity into it, honestly, because this is where we feel that Arsenal can move forward and have an opportunity to make this leap. And they're going to have to make the right signings. And when we go into it, we're going to talk about a lot of players, which, as Jesse's rightly pointed out, these are big names. These aren't kids. These aren't, young boys who are going to, you listen to Mikel Arteta, the understudy to Pep Guardiola. These are going to be seasoned players who've won trophies, won titles, been in the Champions League, are full-bodied internationals who've worked with some very big managers. And he's going to have to be able to manage these players, because if he doesn't, it's going to fail. And if it fails, the question will be is when's it time to move on? Because progress is going to have to be constant. And they've got the money. They're not a poor club in Arsenal. They can spend a lot of cash, and they're going to need to spend it wisely, aren't they, Jesse? So with that there, what do you feel about him, Arteta?
I think the most important point, and the reason why I titled this video, success or failure, I'll be honest, I think it was a success. I think they did okay. I think there are clear signs of progress there. I don't think that they're anywhere near where the fan base thinks they are. I think they're way, way off it entirely. But I do think it's success in the fact that they did make it into Europa League. Giving context onto the end of the season, when they had every opportunity to get Champions League football, means I cannot categorically define it as overachievement. I'm stealing this from Matisse, a Chelsea fan who's on Big Six and all that. The fact is, overachievement, no great side has ever achieved something great by not overachieving. Overachievement is always, look, Liverpool's season, some Liverpool fans who are a little bit jaded will say it's a failure, but the fact is they won 2 cups. They came so close to the league and made it to the final of the Champions League. It's disappointing, but overachievement would have been winning the quad or winning the Champions League, FA Cup, and League Cup altogether. That would have been something you could say, well, that's a great achievement. That's something we did not expect at the beginning of the season. Fact is, this is success, but this was the target. So this is an overachievement. So anyone who's telling you that Arsenal overachieved this season is out of their minds. That's what I believe. Personally, that's what I believe. I think that we've seen a more clear and coherent structure, a more coherent philosophy that we're not totally sure what it is, but it looks like being more structured in a mid-block. And Arsenal's been doing that, letting the youngsters not run wild because they're still playing in a structured way. I would have liked to see ESR get more games this season. Martinelli was injured for a little bit too much. I would have seen Odegaard. I would have liked to see Odegaard be a little bit more of a creator because they don't have one really. And Saka, I think Bukayo Saka has done amazing this season. So I wouldn't pick any holes in that. But I think the most important thing is to recognize that this was a successful season, but it's not overachievement. It's not what people let you believe. With United having our worst season in 50 years and half
living memory, almost
basically living memory, to the point where if you were to double the allotted time in which this was our worst season, you would basically take up the whole of actual official English football league. 100 years, 120 years. It's not like you can run only so much banter on that because United fans know where we're at. Everyone else knows where we're at. It's just one of those where I don't know if it can get any worse at United. I'll be honest. Tottenham, what's his face takes over. Conte takes over late November, early December, and makes a massive push and beats you to top 4, your biggest rival. You take 2 points off of them, but the fact is You lose to, what was it? Palace, Brighton, Newcastle. All you needed was one win from any of those games, and you're in. The pressure built up on the young players, and unfortunately, they weren't capable of getting over the line. So it's success in some generic senses, but at the end of the day, it's not overachievement. I'm gonna run real quick. Can you just go ahead and?
Yeah, no problem. So, yes, so Tris is our moderator. He's just putting in. He says Arsenal Football Club underachieved. Arteta overachieved in relation to experience and lack of squad quality. That's an interesting point. Arsenal did underachieve based on the fact that they are a very, very big club. They're officially the third biggest club in the Premier League. They have spent a lot of money. They have bought a lot of players. They should have improved their defence and conceded less goals. If they conceded the less goals, which was their target, they would have got top four this season. There's numerous games where they would have won or at least not lost if the goal to bring in those players was correct and it had worked out. But unfortunately, it hadn't for whatever reason. So it's a side of Arteta overachieved. I mean, I don't know whether or not I quite agree with that one, because Mikel Arteta now has had 2.5 full seasons as a full-time manager. He won the FA Cup, which was fantastic for them. It was a great result for Arsenal, finally getting a trophy back in the cabinet. But Europa League was always the target this season. However, as dynamic as the Premier League is, when an opportunity arises, your targets change. And seeing how poorly United were playing and how poorly they were at the time and how poor Tottenham were up until Conte coming in. And even while Conte was there, they weren't exactly brilliant. They dropped points on a number of occasions against teams that really they should have beat. Burnley, Brighton, Brentford, just games that come to mind, that they also weren't having a spectacular season. And I always said prior to the top, whoever gets fourth was going to be the team that is the least worst, if that makes sense. It wasn't going to be the best team. It was going to be the one who wasn't having the worst season out of all three. And that's why, for me, they have underachieved. They have achieved their target, but if you look at the context of where they could have, the prize that they could have won, it's a slight underachievement. So I think Arteta is on target. I think Arsenal as a club, though, unfortunately, they missed a mark this season. And this is where next season is going to be so important. So going into next season, Jesse, we can have a look now at the players that they're being linked with, the kind of players who are going to take them basically up to fourth, or even up to third, if possible, mate.
Yeah, I just want to bring one more thing into it.
Sure.
New contract. At the time in which it was given, it just gives me Ollie vibes. I think that was not... Only time will tell whether or not it was a bad decision, but it's just one of those, it boggles the mind how you can give that contract right before the achievement is actually, once you actually achieve the thing. Liverpool gives Klopp a contract with a plethora, just a long CV elsewhere, CV at Liverpool, and just this long drawn out expectation, and you know what he's going to do. And also it was strategic to the point where it was like, we're pushing for these 4 competitions. Let's give Klopp this contract now, because
it's a big boost, isn't it?
Get the squad on side, give them a boost. I don't think you can say the same for Arteta, and it feels a lot like the Ollie contract and what they've essentially done just before getting into transfers is screwed themselves a little bit, because now you're potentially paying out a manager who already doesn't already have a good reputation with players like Saliba, who they're going to want to bring back next season because he's probably one of the best, if not the best, center back in Liga. And it just didn't make any sense. I just want to point that out before we move on to transfers, because
it's good that you brought that up, actually, because it's a point of, it was a rock and a hard place situation, but there was a third option. So they gave him the contract off the back of 3 losses, and that gives out a bad message, because ultimately you're saying, is it rewarding failure? Which it can be spun that way. Or you can spin it the other way, which is they're not giving him the contract based on him achieving top four, because that would have been something else that would have been levelled at them. That if they did get top four, that they then would have gone, well done for getting top four, here's a reward, and give him that one. What would have made sense to me would have been to do exactly what they should have done with Ollie at Manchester United, which was just to step back a minute, wait for the season to end. There was no requirement to give a contract at that moment in time. The Liverpool one is a brilliant example, because it made sense to the whole football community as to why you would do it off the back of a 2-0 win against Villarreal in the semi-finals of the Champions League on a Wednesday night. It's because it gives that morale boost to the fan base, to the players, to everyone, to get that energy going, and gives you that little extra 5-10%. And unfortunately, it didn't quite work out. And as you say, we narrowly missed out on immortality. But with Arsenal, it made no sense to me to do it at the point it did. I think the intention was to try and give them a G up and give them this boost. But in all honesty, it didn't work out really at all, did it?
No, and now they're stuck in a situation where they basically extended the manager's contract by, was it 2 or 3 years? They're going to have him until 2025 or something like that. And I understand it, but again, in a situation like it was with Ollie, no one's coming in for Arteta. I whether or not he does amazing next season, you can hand him the contract this summer. You could have handed it to him today, start of the transfer window, June 1st.
Yeah.
Or I guess it's tomorrow for you guys, but yeah, by 13 minutes. Or you could have handed it to him in November, December. I mean, you have plenty of break next year if he starts the season well. It just didn't make any sense. It stunk of an Ollie contract, and yeah, I just wanted to bring that up because it's a bad decision. No one's coming in for him. I don't care what anyone says. I don't care how much you rate Arteta. No one was. It will be a couple years before any club that could even come close to competing with Arsenal will come in for Arteta. So
100% who have a project that he would be able to go on. So talking of projects, oh god, sorry. So excuse me. Players that they're being linked with. So we have discussed clearly the number of striking options that they have is limited. Aubameyang's gone. Like I said, can't score to save his life. So I'm going to read out the 3 names which have come up, and I'm going to put them in order of likelihood. So the most likely is Gabriel Jesus from Manchester City.
Yep. Yeah, I think that is one that I can see very clearly. I know Tottenham are coming in and competing for him, but
yeah,
the fact is, when you take all things into account, Gabby seems like he's willing to come in, but if Tottenham come in, there's all these things: better stadium, better training ground, better manager, world-class coach, and all those. But at the end of the day, Gabby Jesus, I'm sure he believes in himself, but boy, you got to believe in yourself if you think you're going to take a spot off of Kane as a 9. Kulusevski is doing very, very well. Maybe he does rate himself there on the right wing. And then Son, you're not taking either Kane or Son's spots. And so there's no guarantees there. I just think that, and it also depends on where Gabby wants to play. Does Jesus want to play on the wing, or does he want to make himself as a number 9? I think Arsenal is a great fit for him. And if Arsenal get him, 100%, I would endorse that move. 110%.
Yeah, I think he's the most likely. I think he's incredibly likely. I think he makes a lot of sense. I think clearly his position at City is gone, done. There's no way he's dropped down 2 pecking orders based on the past 2 signings. Haaland's going to take that 9. Julian Alvarez, who played this evening in the Finalissima against Italy, he was very good as well. He's going to come in. He's going to be ahead of Jesus, I'm afraid. So for me, yeah, it makes absolute sense. There's links there between Pep Guardiola and Pep. He knows him. He worked with him before. So I think that's very, very likely. A couple of other players whose names were linked, which was Richarlison and Dominic Calvert-Lewin from Everton. 2 players who, Richarlison says he's leaving. Definitely, he is leaving the club. That he doesn't want to stay at Everton. And then the second part of it is he also, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, has also made mentions and comments that he wants to leave as well. So, but with Everton, they have to sell. They're because of their current financial situation, they're going to have to sell players. So, would you see either of those players as being potential fits up at Arsenal?
I think it just becomes such a financial issue. Richarlison, despite what I think of him, he is a good player. Obviously, he's not a fit for Manchester United. I don't think he's a fit for Arsenal either. Not on a technical level. I think he's just doesn't fit the ethos, the philosophy, and what fans want. And I do think that I don't know how long does he have on his contract? Do you know what's being reported?
Richarlison, I believe it's just over a year on his contract that's left. However, he's made his intentions very, very clear. He wants to leave. He wants to go to somewhere where he can try and win trophies and whatnot. So, again, might be a little bit of a tough sell, Arsenal.
I think this is the thing, and Barcelona doesn't make any sense on any level at this point, but they were tracking him for the past 2 years. They went Rafinha, they went Lewandowski, so he's not going to go there, I don't think, even though that they are interested. They will be interested. You'll see links this summer for Richarlison to Barcelona, but I don't see it happening. Arsenal, that's just a tough sell. I'll just be honest. It's a tough sell. I actually think he might do very well for whoever he goes to in the Premier League next, but he's not coming to United. We've been linked with him unless we miss on Nunez and something goes massively wrong. Nunez. And I think that Arsenal have enough in their budget to get one midfielder and one striker, which leaves them in a difficult position given the fact that they signed up Nketiah to that 100K 5-year contract, which means that they only have a spot for one striker. They really cocked that up. But
yeah,
Calvert-Lewin is the one I would look at. And not because it's going to be easy, and he's going to be very expensive from Everton because they're going to put a premium on him. But he's kind of got that vibe of a London player, kind of like totally into the outside of sport sort of thing, fashionista, hipster, whatever you want to call it. I respect him as a player, but he's been off it for a year. And whether or not that's because Everton's been in a bad state or he just needs to go somewhere to recoup his career, I think he'd be very happy in London. Richarlison, I don't think so much so. Just on a personal level, I don't think that works out as well. I also think that they are looking for a central striker, not a winger. And Richarlison is very much a inside forward stroke winger, not a striker. So
definitely. So I think Jesus, I can very much imagine him at Arsenal. He just seems to give me that. He gives me that feel. He gives me that feel. He's the kind of player who I could see in an Arsenal shirt and working in that system. To be honest, so I'd be incredibly surprised if we don't see Jesus at the Emirates next season, and that's my opinion. So moving on to somebody else who is pretty much, according to reports, going to be in an Arsenal shirt very soon is Hickey, the young Scottish side from Bologna. 21.5 million there. It's odd numbers because they deal with these in euros. So 25 million euros from Bologna. He is predominantly a left back, but he can play right back as well. He's able to play both sides. He scored 5 goals and had 1 assist. Played 38 games in Serie A. He clearly has something about him, and it looks like he's going to be coming in. And it's an interesting one because, again, this is Arsenal purchasing a fullback for the 3rd year on the bounce. And he's 21 years of age. And that is a little bit of a funny one because it's another young player, great for the system, fantastic. But with the young players, as we discussed, it's consistency and having those senior pros around you to be able to guide you and help you and put you to where you need to be. So Hickey coming in, do we see him as being a starting player, or are we going to see him as a sort of rotational backup for Tomiyasu, Tavares, and our man Kieran?
Yeah, no, he's being brought in as a second choice, but he's going to be a starting left back because Tierney can only play 15 games a season. So, I mean, the fact is what they did was they brought in Tavares as the backup because they knew that Kieran Tierney has the potential to be a great left back, and has been in the past, but he's so injury prone. And so they brought in Tavares because they thought he might be good enough. Fact is, Tavares just isn't.
He's not the standard. He's not the right standard, is he, at all?
I don't even think he'll ever work in the Premier League at any club. Maybe Norwich, and he would have taken them straight back down anyways. So
yeah,
he's a championship player at most in England. I'm not saying anywhere, because some leagues just have a slower pace and allow you that much time. I feel the same way about Alex Telles. I said this at the beginning of the show. So I think Hickey is good. I think he's raw. And from what I hear from Arsenal fans is that he's a bit more of an attacking fullback from what I've seen of him. And I haven't seen much, really just compilations, because I wanted to get an idea.
Yeah.
He looks a little bit stiff. He looks a little bit raw. So if that can be coached into him, if defensive discipline can be coached into him, wonderful. I mean, only time will tell. I don't see, and he's kind of cut from the same cloth. Just real quick, Dan, sorry. He's cut from the same cloth as Tierney. I think he went from Celtic to Bologna. And so he's I think there might be a natural progression there that Arsenal, Edu, and Arteta are thinking of. So
absolutely. And he's, as I say, it's interesting when you bring in such raw talent, young players like this. I've just watched him this evening playing for Scotland against Ukraine, and he had a rough night. He was good in places, but then there was places where he wasn't. He was out-muscled by Yarmolenko. Yarmolenchuk, who plays up front for Ukraine. These are players who are, with the greatest respect, Yarmolenchuk is not a Premier League standard striker. He has a lot to learn. He does. He has a lot to learn, and he's going to learn it. So he's going to be the kind of player for me that I would love to have seen, say, for example, at kind of a Liverpool, shall we say. As comes in, learns his trade. He's a great backup who can play both sides, provide cover for Trent, provide cover for Robertson. But I think he would have made more sense, as it currently stands, at a club with two right and left backs who are well established. And he's not going to be relied on so much this season, because he's going to have to get used to the Premier League. And we know he's going to end up playing a lot of games. I can just see it. I think he's a good signing. I do. I think it makes sense, and that's good. They clearly believe in him. £21 million is a lot of an outlay, for a player of his age. So I'm really interested to see how he comes in. But then going and looking. Morning, Anthony. How are you doing, mate? You okay, buddy? So I think looking more into the more established players that we've discussed. Jesus is an established player, but Yuri Tillemans, very heavily linked. He's available on a free. He is not having the greatest of seasons, or he had at Leicester. He looked like he checked out for me completely. He'd already left the club in all way but physicality. Mentally, he looked unbothered. But Tillemans is very, very heavily linked. And do you see him playing in that Arsenal team and working?
I do. And my main reasoning for this is he is just in. I understand that we've had some conversations about Tillemans this season, but the fact is he is a tier 1 version of Granit Xhaka. He's a much better ball progressor, and one of the things that is levered as an advantage to having Xhaka in the Arsenal side is that he does have a forward pass on him. He doesn't normally make it; he usually plays a safe pass, but when it's on, he does play it. Tillemans is much more mobile. He's kind of in that Frankie de Jong role, just a couple tiers down, where he can turn a shoulder. He does scan. He knows where people are. He's not great at pressing, but I also don't think that Arteta we'll pull it up later, Twisted, by the way, but you're talking about, you had a comment 10 minutes ago about Arteta's footballing philosophy. He doesn't really play a high press. Like he doesn't play a forward press. He plays a mid block. I think Tillemans works really well in that system, as has been shown by what we've seen with Leicester. And I think that ultimately what you will get from Tillemans is a lot more press resistance. I think that you'll see that he is capable of linking up with Partey. If Partey can stay fit, I think midfield of Partey, Tielemans, and Odegaard actually does have a decent amount of press resistance, along with quite a bit of press resistance and forward passing into the final third. He has some goals in him. The only thing I'll say about him is that he seems just a bit off of the pace of the Premier League. I'm not convinced that he is really up to the pace of the Premier League. I think he's just a good enough player that when he looks bad, he does enough good things that you don't really accuse him of it. Because like when he can't make a tackle, he's almost like Ruben Neves in a way for me, where he doesn't have a whole lot of pace, but he does have legs and stamina, and he is press resistant. That's the only thing I'd really say on him. I think he'd be a great signing for Arsenal. I'll be fair, because we're in a similar state at United where picking up Tielemans would be a massive upgrade on McTominay. Fred's a completely different player. Picking up Ruben Neves, massive upgrade on our midfield, same as he would be for Arsenal, same as Tielemans would be for Arsenal. And then Frenkie de Jong is just Dan doesn't really rate Frenkie de Jong, but if we get him, he'll see next season. And I
won't say, not that I don't rate him. I just feel that my jury's still out.
Fair enough. Because of what
very good at Ajax, a lot of potential. He's gone to Barcelona. He's still been good, of course. But for me, again, I'll hold this is that ultimately for me, I need to see it, and it needs to stand out, if you understand what I mean. I've got a good eye when it comes to football, got a good eye when it comes to players. And for me at the moment, I'm just trying to go, let's forget the Ajax stuff and the potential and start getting our mind's eye of where the ceiling is. I'm going, right, let me just see what I can see. So I think De Jong is a great player. I just think that I'm just waiting to see. And if he comes, it's going to be, sort of a big test to come to the Premier League. And, it's going to be a big opportunity for him to prove his point, isn't it? So another player. So Tielemans makes for me a lot of sense. I think that's going to be done. I can't see it not happening. But then again, this is football. Anything can happen. So the next player, and this was more recent that's been linked, is Alexander Zinchenko from City. He rarely plays for City, and he offers a very unique situation, is that he is a left back or a right back who can also play in midfield. And he makes a lot of sense because he'd be available, I think. He spent quite a bit of time at City now. He's won trophies. And he would tick a lot of boxes. What do you think? What do you think of Zinchenko?
I'm leaning this way just by looking at what's been going on. They need one left back. They're not going to be searching. They're not in the market for a right back right now. So I think the fact is it would have to be in midfield. So I think the moment you see Tielemans go to Arsenal, which I think we can pretty much say is, if I had to do without knowing Arsenal as well as Arsenal fans obviously do, that's 80%. I think the moment that happens, the plan goes pretty much dead. And then once they sign Hickey, which looks like it's 90% on, yeah. I think that just goes completely quiet. And I don't think Shevchenko would want to move. I'll be honest. I think that there's an opportunity there. The fact that Shevchenko has Zinchenko. I keep saying Shevchenko. Yeah, Zinchenko.
They're not signing him. He's finished, mate. I'm afraid he ain't going to do nothing for Arsenal. It's great name, but listen, he'd sell loads of shirts, but he ain't going to score many goals.
Freudian slip. No. But at the same time, I think that once those two signings get over the line, I think that's dead in the water.
Yeah, I don't think there'd be any space, would there? I don't think there'd be any space for him. But it was kind of mentioned in it, and then I started thinking about it. I thought, you know what? It kind of makes sense. He's a player who gets very limited opportunities at City, and he would offer that versatility of being able to play in midfield, which he does play for Ukraine. Plays in the midfield for Ukraine, but he could also play as a left back for if required. So he actually offered like a utility. It was almost like a Ukrainian James Milner, shall we say? Someone who can kind of do it all for you. He'd be a very capable and like a player who could have come in to done some business for them. So
I think he's very comfortable where he is at Man City, and I think they'll get rid of him soon enough. But I imagine he'll move on to something outside the Premier League.
yeah,
I still have a feeling about that. And like I said, I think he's very comfortable currently.
Yeah,
can we just answer Twist's last question here? Or just approach
yeah,
it?
put it up, yeah, bring it up, yeah.
Yeah. 0 world-class players, 0 leaders, 0 captain, long season ahead for Arsenal. This is what we're saying. What they need to do is bring in players like Gabby. A Tielemans would be fantastic. I think that they need to do those sorts of signings are the next ones they need to look at. Hickey is going to be a backup. I think they need to bring in more than that, though. I think they need to bring in, like, kind of like Twisted is alluding to here. They really need to bring in experienced leaders, not Xhaka, who's never won anything. I think Arsenal fans talk about all the time. Since Xhaka came in, they've never made it back into the Champions League. Like he's just not the standard. He's never been the leader that they wanted. So,
I mean, choosing Martin Odegaard just as an example, he's 24 years of age and he's being made the captain. When I've watched him, I don't know. It's just, as I say, the jury's out for me as to whether or not he commands the presence enough to be a captain within that team. I just genuinely feel he doesn't have the voice for me to be the captain of Arsenal. I think they need someone a little bit more well established, someone who can be able to set an example, lead the team, and just have a presence about them, which is a captain. So I definitely agree with you on that side, Twisted 100%. So going to a little bit, not say left field, but a little bit more unlikely. Serge Gnabry back. Do you see it happening?
No, I don't. And from what I've picked up on from just doing a little bit of research earlier today, I think that the general consensus from very sensible Arsenal fans, at least within the social media space, not Twitter, but YouTube, and people who might actually be thinking a little bit more critically about it instead of just the fandom, so to speak, it does appear as though there is more fandom, fan talk, fan speak than it is Arsenal actually being interested. And Gnabry definitely came in and kind of led people on saying, well, I could envision it. He said that in an interview. And of course, that just lights up the internet. I don't know what Gnabry wants to do. I mean, he's done it all at Bayern. To be fair, he's won a Champions League. I don't think he was in the World Cup squad at that time. Euros is far off, so there's no worries about that. If he wants to go to a place that will pay him a lot of money and he wants to be in London, those are the two main appeals. So it could happen.
Yeah.
But from what I'm sensing, it's fan talk. It's looking at the situation and saying, hey, look, this would be amazing. So
yeah, and that's right, isn't it? I think the stars are aligning. I think people were putting 2 and 2 together, weren't they, when they came to that transfer? That he's into his last year of his deal. The contracts are breaking down. He's been at Arsenal before. He's been in the Premier League, but at West Brom. Tony Pulis knows all about him. And he's gone a little bit off the boil. Season before, fantastic this season. He's not been as great as he was in the past. Would have been an opportunity, and I totally agree with you. I think that the two sides of the decision, which probably not what you would want him to come for, which is A, the money, and B, because it's London, they make sense, but I don't think they be the right reasons that you want. So with them lining up potentially, I mean, with those 3 players that we think that they're going to bring in, we're going to see Jesus playing as a 9. We're going to see Hickey kind of coming in as sort of a backup player. I don't see him starting because I don't think he'd be their strongest player, but he would be involved with the team. And Yuri Tielemans taking over Granit Xhaka's position. So looking at that lineup there, it's going to be Ramsdale, Tomiyasu, Martinelli, White, Kieran Tierney, Yuri Tielemans, Martin Odegaard and Thomas Partey with Bukayo Saka, Gabriel Jesus, and probably Martinelli on the left-hand side.
Martinelli, given Emil Smith Rowe's injury record, is what I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah. That lineup there that we've just put on there. So, not taken out for the fact that United will improve, because, well, they have to. Ultimately, they couldn't got any worse. Tottenham will improve. I can't see them not improving and being a better team as they were. Where do we genuinely see Arsenal? Do we see them making the leap going into top four? Do we see them remaining where they are, or do we see them potentially, even with these new signings, taking an inadvertent sort of step back because of the self-correction, potentially? So if United come back up to the level where they should be, are they already above that Arsenal team?
I think if you see a back line of, even if it's Maguire, stroke Lindelof, with Timber, and then a Delo, or however we structure our back line next year, I don't think is as imperative given the way we're going to play. I think that we're going to have a lot of pace in our back two. The way that I know that United is going to play, or I would assume that we're going to try to play, if we get all the signings that we've already spoken about with United, I think we finish fifth comfortably. I think Tottenham is comfortably in the top four. I don't see how. I mean, Perisic, despite his age, is still a remarkable player. Getting him on a free, bringing him in to shore up whether they're going to play him wing back. He can play wing back. He can play left wing. He can play right wing. He could almost play striker. He won't. That's not what he'll be used
He's
for.
Just a top versatile player, isn't he? He's
immense. He's immense. He's a great player, and a lot of people on United channels have people who don't know as much about the history about United over the past 10 years have been like, well, why didn't we bring in Perisic on a free? Because it's not the profile that Ten Hag would ever want. It wasn't the one that Louis van Gaal wanted. It was the one that Jose wanted, and he would have been immense for Jose 4 years ago, and he'll be immense for Conte now. So they've already started their business in a great way. If they get Bastoni, they bring in another quality center back. I don't necessarily rate Bastoni on a fundamental level. He's not the sort of defender I want because he doesn't have a whole lot of pace, but he'll be great for Tottenham. I just think Tottenham has too many good things going on, as well as the confidence to push forward with a great manager and a large budget to spend this summer. And they're already spending it wisely. Because if they can convince Bastoni, which is going to be difficult because he's, like I was talking about with Vlahojevic, he's one of those who's Italian through and through. So he'll want to stay in Italy. But if they can convince him with Paratici and Conte, then they're going to have a very good back line that wants to play the way that Conte wants to play. Set up a low block, a mid block, and go on the counter. And they're going to be brilliant at it. I think sixth already is something that Arsenal need to be looking at. If United get all their targets, I don't see them finishing above us. I'll be honest. And I'm getting a little bit cocky there, but the fact is I just don't see it. Going down the ladder, I think Arsenal has enough if they were to get those 3 targets to get over the line and get 6th or 5th, but I would say 6th. 7th is a possibility, though, because it's a hard one to call because Newcastle's already going mad. I don't have a lot of faith in Eddie Howe. I don't at that end of the table, but I do think that it's going to be quite the test to have Villa, who's already brought in 2 amazing signings, Kamara and whoever, right?
Yeah, I mean, they brought in Bubamar Kamara, they brought in Diego Carlos, 2 players who have already shored up their team. They're already a better team immediately for bringing in 2 players of that standard, that quality into Aston Villa. And I think that is the most interesting sort of development, is that we're going to look at the teams. So you've already mentioned Newcastle, you mentioned Aston Villa, West Ham and Wolves. There's 4 teams there who are already going to be providing a lot of pressure to the teams who are in 5th, 6th, 7th. They're all going to be vying for those places. Aston Villa will be looking for Europa League next season. Newcastle will be looking for potentially Europa League. I don't think it'll be achievable. I don't think that they'll have enough quality still. I think it's going to take a little while, but I think they're going to be pushing. I think they're going to be a difficult team to beat. We're going to look at Wolves, who, if they have an improved season, they're going to be in and about the conversation. West Ham, again, I think are going to be in and about the conversation in those positions. So it's going to be really interesting because for me, and we've said this before, haven't we? I believe still, there's only one spot available in the top four, and it's fourth. Now that Chelsea's been bought out, it's got the payment sorted, everything's sort of settled, I think they're going to make some good signings. I think they'll still comfortably hold on to third position. I think they'll gatekeep that position. Tottenham could start vying for that position potentially if the right conditions are met and they bring the right players in. That could well happen. They could be looking at third. So it means there's going to be two managers next season who are going to be left disappointed. It's going to potentially be Ten Hag. It's going to be Arteta. It's going to be Conte. So
if I'm super honest, I think that with the transfers, if United were to get these four over the line, if we were to get Timber, Nunez, which again, Liverpool could come in, and you know how I feel about that. I think you guys take him straight away from us. And Frankie de Jong, which again is a total offside shout.
Yeah, and it's a big ask.
We get a Neves or some other midfielder, someone who's positionally disciplined. I think that would inspire me to say United has a 10% chance of gate crashing top four. But I think as far as things are now, it's clearly those four teams you just read out. You just said. And I think if United did and things clicked early on, and that's heavily dependent on getting in a couple of players who already know how he plays, how Ten Hag plays, and being given full control, I think we're the only ones who can really gate crash it. It's nothing against Arsenal. I just think that as many Arsenal fans on social media will recognize, this was the opportunity for Arsenal. It really was to get into top four and then push on with.
Oh, no. I agree, and this is a good opportunity for us to bring up about Twisted's comment here. Arteta will taste Europe for the first time. Do you think he will personally be ready? It's going to be interesting. Europa League throws up a lot of variables because you can end up with teams like Sevilla. You can end up with teams like crikey, I mean, there's so many different teams. You can end up in Lyon. It could be in there. We can see numerous clubs which compose very sort of different threats. That you look at teams like Atletico Madrid, you know what you're going to get in the Champions League. You know what you're going to get. They're well known for how they're going to play. You come up against a Bayern Munich, you know what you're going to get. You come up against RB Salzburg, you know what you're going to get. Leipzig, they're all quite predictable. But with the Europa League, there's a lot of variables. So it can really depend on who they get in the group. And if they're teams which are a little, not say a little bit easier, but a little bit more sort of predictable on what they're going to get, and we'll be able to identify how well they're going to do. For Arsenal, their target should absolutely be to aim to try and win it. That should be a possibility. If we look at who won the Europa League this season, Eintracht Frankfurt and Rangers, I don't think there's an Arsenal fan on this planet who would suggest that they think that either of those clubs are better than Arsenal. So if those were the winners last season, Arsenal should be trying to emulate that and do that. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see. We'll have to wait and see as to how that comes about. So just as we come up to the end of the show, about an hour and a half, I've really enjoyed our conversation. I think that we've covered a lot of stuff there. I think we've been fair and balanced about how things, have gone on. Some things that have been good, some things that haven't been so good. There's a lot of work to do at Arsenal. I think we can agree. So on our kind of conclusion, this season has been a success, but a limited success at that. I would say the success was to get to the Europa League, which was fantastic. They removed a number of players which I felt that they wanted to get rid of, and they've achieved in doing that. The success is limited in certain situations. For example, for the transfers that they brought in, a number of them have failed to really hit the mark or have lived up to what they were expected to be able to do. However, next season's a new season, and potentially those players will improve, and then that situation will change. But the main limitation was the fact that this was an amazing opportunity for Arsenal to achieve top four with two clubs both being in disarray. Tottenham early on being in a disarray, and then Manchester United through a period of, well, basically from November onwards, were in free fall and were there for the taking from any club. So that's where the limitations come from. So Arsenal success to a limited degree. Next season, I believe, is going to be a much bigger task for Arteta. I think it's going to be a much harder season than this one. And this will really test his abilities, test the abilities of the players, and give us an idea as to whether or not he is actually going to be the person to take them to the next level. Jesse, you got anything more to add to that before we wrap up, mate?
No, I think you're concise there. And the fact is, you can feel which way you want about Arsenal at this point in time. The fact is, they achieved a standard this season, but given the progress of not just Arsenal, not just United, Tottenham, Chelsea, Liverpool, and City, but looking back at the Newcastle takeover, looking back at how Villa are coming correct in every which way, even though they achieved the standard, I think that this could be a very, very disappointing season 2 or 3 years down the line for Arsenal. I think that they might look back at this and say, we had one opportunity to push on and be serious, and we just didn't do it.
We let it slip.
Yep.
This is it. So, yeah, ladies and gentlemen, that comes to the end of our show. I just want to thank everyone who's watched, people who put the comments in, Twisted, Anti, really appreciate you coming on there. It's been fantastic. I've really enjoyed doing this one. Jesse, thank you very much for coming on. We're going to be doing a number of these sort of shows. We're going to be covering Liverpool and cover Manchester. We've already covered Manchester United. We're going to look at City. We're going to look at Tottenham. I think Tottenham will be a really interesting one for us to look at in the coming week. So if you want to be involved in the show, if you want to come on, if you want to have your own say, you're always welcome to stop us a message. If you've liked the stream, could you put a like on there, hit that subscribe button and share to your friends if you've enjoyed the content. We will catch us all next time. Thanks very much for watching Talk Football, and we will see you very soon. Thanks very much, guys. Cheers.
Ciao.